Hello everybody, welcome to Math 1314, Chapter 3, Section 2 homework. Let's look at the first one. Solve this group. Well, first off, we knew just because there's an equal sign and variables, we know it has to be solved. So let's look for the solutions. We have 8a plus 5 times 3a minus 9 equals 0. Since it's already in factored form, all we have to do now is use the zero product principle, saying let's take both of these equations and set them equal to 0. So we have 8a plus 5 set equal to 0, 3a minus 9 set equal to 0. So first thing you do, move the constant to the other side. So you have 8a equals negative 5. Add 9 to both sides. So you have 3a equals 9. And divide both sides by a on the left one, and both sides by 3 on the right one. So on this one, a is equal to negative 5 over 8, and the right side, a is equal to 9 divided by 3, which is 3. Those are our two solutions. Let's call it zero product principle. Once we have the two linear equations in parentheses set equal to 0, then set them equal to 0 individually. Solve this one. S squared minus 4s minus 21. So the following question number 1, let's first see if we can factor this one. See if we can put it in two linear equations. So the first s squared is made up of s times s. The leading coefficient's 1, so it's a lot easier this way. So look at the first one, s is ss. Now look at the second sign. It's a minus, so that means both signs are different. Look at the first sign. The first sign is a minus, so that means the bigger number, the bigger answer has to go in the negative. All right, so let's figure out what times what equals 21. That's the last number. What times what equals 21? When we subtract them, it equals 4. So let's look at the numbers. We have 21 times 1, but 21 minus 1 is 20. That's not it. 7 times 3. 7 times 3 is 21. 7 minus 3 is 4. Those are the numbers. So the bigger number is 7. It goes in the negative because the first sign is negative. And 3 goes in the positive. Since we're asked to solve this, we have to take both of these, set them equal to 0. So in this one, s is equal to negative 3, and the next one, s is equal to 7. Again, a long time ago we learned, if you have it inside parentheses, the answer is always the opposite. So the answers here are negative 3 and 7. Now, a shortcut. We can do the same thing up here. Whenever you have a number, a coefficient in front of your variable inside there, you don't have to go through this whole process. The top number, opposite of that would be negative 5. And then whatever's in front of the variable goes on the bottom. So with this one, I'm going to use negative 5 over 8. This one's positive 9 over 3, which is 3. So once you get to this point, if you see the shortcut, take it. Okay, now the third one. 5x squared minus 55 equals 0. You're asked to solve. Okay, we see here that we only have two terms. The 0 doesn't count. And only one of them is an x. look back in your notes. If you have two terms, it's called binomial, and only one x, the first thing you do is put the x's on one side and non-x's on the other side. So in this case, I'm going to add 55 to both sides. That leaves me with 5x squared equals 55. Divide both sides by 5. So that gives me x squared equals 11. To get rid of the x squared, I square root both sides. So that gives me x equals, remember, whenever you square root something squared, you have to put a plus or minus. Plus or minus square root of 11. So now, simplify your answer. Type an exact answer using radicals as needed. Express the numbers in terms of I. Use commas to separate the answers. We have two answers. We have x equals square root of 11 and x equals negative square root of 11. Those are our two answers. That's what this plus or minus means. Use the graph of this red graph here. Find the x-intercepts of the graph and the zeros of the functions. Remember, x-intercepts are locations. X-intercepts, locations. That's a point. So the answer has to be in an x and y coordinate. The 0 is an x value. That makes the answer 0. Makes the question equal to 0. So it's a number. X equals a number. So let's look at this one. The x-intercepts are at negative 2 and 4. X-intercepts are locations. So it's negative 2, 0, comma, 4, comma, 0. Those are the x and y points. X-intercepts, the y values are 0. The zeros are simply the x locations, x numbers, negative 2 and 4. All right, next one, same thing. We have this graph. Let's find the x-intercepts. X-intercepts are at negative 1 and 4, so it's negative 1, comma, 0, comma, 4, comma, 0. And the zeros are simply the numbers, negative 1 and 4. Okay, while we're here, let's look at these two pictures. What can you tell me about, what else can you tell me about these? Well, look at the top one. We know it's open down. It's a parabola, first off. So that means the equation has this form. It's a parabola. Since it opens down, we know that a has to be negative. What else do we know? Well, we know that 8 on the y-axis, 8 is the y-intercept. The constant is always the y-intercept. All right, so, and we also could tell me the vertex. The vertex is at 1, comma, 9. Because it's 8, 10, so between there's 9. So the vertex is at 1, comma, 9. The other one, again, it's ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. The y-intercept is negative 4, so it's the c value is negative 4. It's opened up, so the a is positive, whatever that a is. We'll figure that out later. And we know the vertex is right about there. So it's roughly around 6.5. So it's 1.5 negative 6.5. But yeah, that's not what we're looking for. But you should be able to look at equations now, look at graphs, look at equations to tell me a lot more about it. Solve by completing the square. Alright, so x squared equals 18x plus 10. The process of completing the square is, okay, we have a standard form equation, which is not this case. It's ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And then the first thing we do is move the c over. So what we want, our first step, we want to make sure our equation, it looks like that. So the x is on one side, constants on the other side. So that means this 18x has got to move over. So we have x squared minus 18x equals positive 10. And then I'm also going to send you guys a step-by-step sheet, a instruction sheet, formula sheet for this section, because we dealt with factoring, complete the square, and quadratic formula. All right, so next step. This is our b term. Whatever's in front of x is our b term. Remember, next we're supposed to take b over 2 and square it. Add it to both sides. So we have x squared minus 18x plus 18 over 2 squared equals 10 plus 18 over 2 squared. Look at your sheet. It says on the left side, only do what's inside the parentheses. 18 divided by 2 is 9, so leave that alone. On the right-hand side, work it all the way out. So we have 18 over 2 is 9. 9 squared is 81. So 10 plus 81 is 91. So far, so good. All right, so on the left-hand side, since all we did was inside there, anything under the squared goes inside my parenthesis, because it's still going to be under the square. So here's the x, the first term, the 9, and whatever the first sign is goes there. Equals 91. In the next section, this is going to be pretty important for us when we graph. This tells us a lot. It's going to tell us where our vertex is and a lot more stuff. So let's solve for x. What we have to do now is to get rid of the square. I have to do what? Right. In order to get rid of the square, I have to square root both sides. So the left side becomes just x minus 9. Because of the square and square root cancel. On the right hand side, it's plus or minus square root of 91. 91 is a prime number. Last step is we add 9 to both sides. So we have x equals positive 9, because we added 9, plus or minus square root of 91. So again, it wants all the answers separated, so your answer is going to be 9 plus square root of 91, comma, 9 minus radical 91. All right, so that's that question. Those questions. 3 more. Use the quadratic formula to solve this one. So remember, when it says quadratic formula, remember what the quadratic formula is? If not, then put it to memory. It's x equals negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac over 2a. That's the formula. But you're solving for x. So it's 2x squared minus 3x equals 1. The first thing you have to do in this type of equation is you have to set it equal to 0. So in this case, we have to move the 1 over. So we have 2x squared minus 3x minus 1 equals 0. Then, because we have to use this formula, we have to label A, B, C. Since it equals 0, A is 2, B is negative 3, the sign belongs to the number, and C is negative 1. Notice, here's a very important point, especially in the last section of this last part of this section when we dealt with quadratic equations in form. So we always solve for the middle variable. Remember, so if we had 2x to the 4th minus 3x squared minus 1, we would solve whatever that middle term is. That's what x is. It's a side bit of information. So let's start plugging in. We have negative, b is negative 3, so I'll put that in parentheses, plus or minus square root of negative 3 squared minus 4 times a times c. So it's 4 times 2 times negative 1. All that part is under square root over 2a, which is 2 times 2. Negative of negative makes it a positive 3, plus or minus. Negative 3 squared is 9. A negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 2 is 8, times 1 is 8, over 2 times 2 is 4. So it's 3 plus or minus square root of 9 plus 8 is 17, over 4. Can't go any further, so that's our answer. 3 plus radical 17, 3 minus radical 17. So you have to use them both. To state whether the function is linear or quadratic. Because there's no exponent, it's linear, so it's A. State whether the function is linear or quadratic. There's a square, yeah, but it doesn't belong to the x. X is the important thing, the variable. See, the x power is 1, the x power is still 1. This one doesn't matter. It can be squared, it can have anything around it. But as long as the variable doesn't have a symbol or a number above it, it's linear. So this one's B, it's linear. Alright, good luck everybody.